Hello and welcome back to State of the Division, this time in 2026 and in the Paramount era. I'm hoping this will be a good, but I actually have no idea, but 324 might be signaling some good things ahead because I'm cautiously optimistic. 324 is interesting on paper with a handful of prospects and a number of fighters trying to re-enter that title contention picture or trying to even enter it for the first time. I'm really optimistic for how this card's going to turn out. It at least looks interesting. We got some fun heavyweight prospects especially, so let's hope this isn't misplaced. But as always, we do have our housekeeping in the Butcher's Bill. Well, for housekeeping, I'm 0-0, so we're going to hope it turns out well this year. And for the Butcher's Bill, it's a little more complicated. Alexa Grasso is out against Rose Namajunas due to injury. She is replaced by Natalia Silva. That fight is happening on the main card. Kayla Harrison was forced to withdraw due to neck injury against Amanda Nunes, and that fight was pulled entirely from 324. Not really sure which fight replaced it, or even if it was replaced, but it's no longer happening. As it stands, those are the only injuries we've had to deal with, and let's hope it stays that way. Kicking us off, 10-5 Adam Fugit squares up with the newcomer, 6-0-1 Thai Thriller Miller. Miller is 12 years younger at 25, 1 inch taller with a dead draw and reach. Fugit has been very on and off in the UFC, but does still resemble a kill-or-be-killed fighter. There is a definite focus on the striking, but unfortunately he has been caught more often than he has delivered. A 4.59 to 4.54 striking average showing that off. He does tend to work quick in the wins, but is able to drag fights out in most of his losses. The ground game sits at a 1.83, but is very much buoyed by a 4 takedown performance against Kinoshita. Miller is coming into his first actual UFC fight and looks to be a grinder, with 4 career decision wins and 2 KO. In his Contender Series bout, he outstruck his opponent 84 to 57 and was taken down once to get a decision win. Seems to be a striking focused fighter, but I don't know if that'll last. Miller is the favorite here, and I will agree. Miller is a bit of an unknown for sure, but for me, I like the favorite unknown versus what I know from Fugit. Fugit is very streaky and susceptible to getting caught. And while Miller isn't a finisher, he has the tools to control the fight and take advantage of Fugit's flaws. So in this case, I'm going to roll with Vegas and go with Miller. 12-5, Ricky Pretty Tercios tries to stop the skid against 12-6, the babyface killer, Cameron Smotherman. Smotherman is 4 years younger, either even height or 1 inch to Smotherman, with 2 inches of reach heading to Tercios. Tercios has struggled a bit in the UFC, notching 2 wins in 6 fights, and honestly, I don't really know how to describe him. He has a decent pace on the feet, rocking a 4.73 to 3.72, and being able to match pace with a lot of opponents, but also being able to be outpaced in others. The ground game seems to play a major role in his game plan, with a .91 average and takedowns in half of his fights. However, he has been taken down a bunch and controlled in his most recent fights. Smotherman has also struggled in the UFC, coming across as a striking-focused grinder. A 4.07 to 3.52 in the striking, showing that he is able to take narrow striking leads, but also will be outpaced. The ground game also seems to be a weakness, with a 0.00 takedown average and a 62% takedown defense, but he has been taken down 8 times in his last 2 fights. Smotherman is the favorite here by a narrow margin, and I'm going to disagree and roll with Tercios. I'm not super confident about this, to be honest, but Smotherman looks to have problems with the ground game, and Tercios leans into the ground game a good deal, giving him the advantage in my mind. 7-0 Josh, the incredible Hockett looks to stay perfect against the 7-1 Denzel Luke Fox Freeman. Hockett is 6 years younger, with height being a dead draw or an inch in favor of Freeman, with 4 inches of reach also going to Freeman. Hockett is fairly new to the UFC, but across his 2 fights resembles a rounded heavyweight. In the striking, working a 5.12 to 1.42, albeit across 2 fights, being able to finish quick and build a striking lead. He also does have 6 takedowns in his Contender Series fight for 3 minutes and 57 seconds of control time. He also does have 3 submission wins in his career. Freeman is also fairly new, with 1 UFC fight. He carries a 3.27 to 2.07 on the feet as a result of his UFC win, a solid striking lead across 3 rounds, taking him to the decision. He does carry 4 career KO wins, so there is some definite power there, with the main question being if he can bring it out in the UFC. Vegas does give the nod to Hockett, I will agree. A bit of this is just the lack of information on both fighters, making me kind of roll with the money people in Vegas. But at the same time, the more consistent finishing touch of Hockett gives him the narrowest of edges in my mind. There is also the fact he was able to land 6 takedowns in 1 fight, and having that in his toolkit gives him a definite edge in my mind, though we're never sure how much that's going to matter in a heavyweight bout. Getting us out of the early prelims, 24-19 Michael the Menace Johnson takes the cage against 18-8 Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez. Hernandez is 6 years younger at 33, 1 inch shorter with another inch of reach, also heading to Johnson. Michael Johnson rolls in as a striker, packing both the ability to drop his opponent and manage the fight across 3 rounds. In the numbers, he's got a 4.28 to a 3.97, speaking to his ability to effectively manage the fight and keep himself in the driver's seat. It can be close, but oftentimes the finish ability will act as the decider. He does seem to have an effective ground game in limited deployments with a 0.58 average, mostly being used for control time in matchup situations. Hernandez is more of a straight finisher, packing heavy hands and the ability to pour the pressure on if he can't end it early. In the striking, works at 4.31 to 4.50. Good pace, but also more than willing to eat shots to exchange and land his offense. This does backfire with some opponents who are able to drown him in pace or land the power shot before he can. I do also have to mention the ground game at a 1.14 average and its consistent appearance for large chunks of control time and serving as a major boon. Vegas has this close, but does give the nod to Hernandez, and frankly I will agree. Johnson has a shot for sure, his ability to win the fight in a multitude of ways helping, but he does tend to stretch the fight out. And in doing so, he keeps Hernandez in the game longer, giving him more opportunities to land his power shot and get his takedown game working, which is something Johnson has struggled with before, and that gives Hernandez the edge in my mind. Into the prelims, 25-10 Alex Perez looks to right the ship against the 18-7 Charles Energy Johnson. Perez is 2 years younger, with Johnson taking 3 inches in height and 2 inches of reach. Perez has been in a rough patch as of late, winning 1 fight since his 2020 title fight. But as a whole, he has been a kill-or-be-killed fighter, packing a whole lot of finishability with a 4.16 to 3.22 in the striking, speaking to a little bit of a slower pace while also leveraging that power punching ability. Backing that all up is a dangerous 2.28 takedown average with consistent presence in his fights for both disruption and chunks of control time. There also is a submission threat lurking in the wings. The last one was in 2020. Johnson has a finishing touch for certain, but isn't always able to bring it out, making him act as a bit of a grinder in a handful of his recent fights. A 0.56 takedown average and the ability to stack takedowns for control time backing this up. On the feet, he rolls a 4.37 to 3.78, speaking to his ability to finish it with a power shot in a blink or stretch it out across 3 rounds and get the points. Johnson gets the nod in this fight. I will agree. It's a finisher versus finisher, so it's always going to feel a bit closer than the numbers actually show, but I feel that Johnson has just been that little bit more consistent in finding his finishing touch and winning those fights compared to Perez. 30-11, Nikita the Miner Krylov looks for a win over 19-6 Modestus the Baltic Gladiator Bukauskas. Bukauskas is 2 years younger at 31 with dead even height and only an inch of reach going to Krylov. Krylov is a bit of an all-rounder, being able to finish the fight by going the distance, nailing a finish, or sinking a submission. He has been a bit inconsistent in finding the win, only winning 3 of his 6 fights since 2021. In the numbers, the ground has been a major part of his game plan with a 2.17 takedown average and the ability to stack them and rack up swats of control time, or even sink a submission. In the same vein, he is susceptible to being taken down and controlled, and even submitted. Striking is solid in the numbers, 4.31 to 2.58, speaking to his ability to match pace and even set up a slight lead. The power is a little odd to judge with its inconsistent appearances. Bukauskas is more of a kill-or-be-killed fighter, bringing explosive and a dynamic style to the ring. In the striking, it's very much the kill-or-be-killed standard at 3.32 to 3.93, being more than willing to exchange for the ability to land his power and put pressure on his opponent. There also is a ground game sparingly used with a 0.30 average, but effective when actually shoots, so it seems to be like a game plan or matchup piece. Vegas has this one close, but does give the nod to Bukauskas, and I will agree. Krylov being an all-rounder gives me pause. Being able to pull all the different tricks out definitely helps. But the inconsistency in which he wins his fights and deploys those tools brings me back to Bukauskas, who, in addition to his finishing power, has been able to work a submission game with solid takedown deployment, giving him almost an equal number of tools that he's been able to more consistently use to win fights, it seems, than Krylov. 9-1 Ateba the Silent Assassin Gautier looks for win number 10 against the 10-3 Andrei Pulayev. Gautier is 5 years younger, even height across the board at 6'4", with 3 inches of reach rolling to Gautier. Gautier is going to his 5th UFC fight and is a pure finisher, each of his 5 fights ending by KO. In the numbers, you see that with a 6.57 to 1.95, speaking to how he ends the fights in a blink. He has proven the ability to go multiple rounds, but does trend towards the early finish. He also has a 0.96 takedown average with 1 landed takedown in his last fight for 4 seconds of ground control. Pulayev rolls into this as a finisher, who is able to take the fight the distance if needed. The striking seems to be a primary focus with an explosive style, 3.81 to 3.51 average, speaking to both how that pace can be turned against him in a 73-18 unanimous decision loss, but also how his totals can be fairly close due to the quick finish ability. There is a bit of a ground game at a 0.41 takedown average, but it feels very situational. Gautier gets the Vegas nod here, and I will agree. Pulev poses a threat, but the consistency of Gaudier's game plan and his aggressiveness in deploying it gives him the greater advantage in my mind. And Pulev just has a lot to overcome in this fight, and I'm not really sure if he's going to be able to do it against Gaudier. In the last fight before the main card, 19-1 Umar Nurmagomedov squares off with the 25-5-1 Davison Deus de Guerrera Figueiredo. Nurmagomedov is 8 years younger, 3 inches taller, with an inch of reach also going his way. Nurmagomedov is a dominator type of grinder. He takes you down and doesn't let you get up or really get anything going. A 4.30 takedown average with at least 1 takedown landed in all but 1 of his UFC fights. There even is a submission threat that he can land. The striking is really solid, 4.08 to 2.04, bolstered by how he restrains and limits his opponent's ability to get anything going. He does have the ability to land a KO, but it's few and far between with how he fights. Figueiredo is a bit of a grinder, but also carries some deadly finishing ability. The striking isn't great, 2.75 to 3.54, but does pack some power, able to rack up some serious damage quickly. Even when outstruck, he's able to go back to a dangerous ground game at a 1.71 takedown average, with a consistent presence in his fights, both racking up chunks of control time plus limiting the offense his opponents are actually able to mount. The favorite by 1.5 miles is Nurmagomedov. I'm talking minus 1,500 odds at the time of writing, and I'm going to agree. And I really do like Figueiredo. And I think Figueiredo has the slightest bit of advantage on the feet in this fight, but it comes down to, will he be able to either keep control on the ground or prevent the fight from going to the ground? And with what we've seen Nurmagomedov do, and with how he's fought other aggressive opponents with good ground games, I'm not sure Figueiredo has the toolkit or the ability to either prevent himself from being on the bottom position or prevent the fight from going to the ground. And Nurmagomedov has proven to have good enough striking to at least hang in with fighters and then deploy his ground game. So I think Figueiredo just has a much harder path to victory if he wants to try and get there. In the main card, 20-3 Arnold Almighty Allen opens it up against 16-3 Jean Lord Silva. Silva is 2 years younger, 2 inches shorter, with a whopping inch of reach, also heading to Allen. Allen kicks it off as a striking-focused grinder, able to both slow a fight down and straight outpace his opponents. A 3.45 to 2.88 in the striking, showing his tendency to work a slower pace, but also is able to be kept up with by some opponents. There is a faint presence of a KO power there, with 1 KO win in 2022. There is also an effective ground game, whose presence seems to be based around a game plan or matchup. 0.93 average with his last landed takedown in 2021. On the same note, he rolls with a 75% takedown defense and was last taken down in 2024 against Mosvar Evelev. Silva is a high-octane killer-be-killed fighter, pushing a wicked pace with wicked power. A 4.79 to 4.69, highlighting his willingness to engage and trade, relying on that power and explosiveness to put his opponents away. Additionally, with Silva, you have to acknowledge a submission threat that can be landed as a defense in addition to a ground game that has been able to be effective in its limited uses. The Lord gets the Vegas nod here, and I will be agreeing. Although I don't love the odds on this fight, I do feel like it is a little closer than the numbers make it feel. But my main reasoning for going with Silva here is that Allen doesn't tend to finish and lets the fight go long without the heavy use of takedowns. In this fight, that means Silva is on his feet, in the mix, letting him bring out his dangerous power and explosive striking. All things that can end the fight in an instant, and every time Allen steps in to swing, he's opening himself up for a comeback punch or some sort of exchange where Silva can easily come out on top. I don't think Allen is out of the mix, I just do think this is a dangerous fight for him. 19-5-1 Natalia Silva looks to keep it rolling against the always dangerous 14-7 thug Rose Namajunas. Silva is 5 years younger at 28, either a dead draw in height or 1 inch in favor of Namajunas, with 3 inches of reach also going to Namajunas. Silva rolls into this looking like a striking focused grinder, going the distance and winning it by points. Not a lot of focus on the ground game, with a .34 takedown average, with the last landed takedown in 2022. She does carry a 92% takedown defense, and the few times she has been taken down has been able to survive and get back up. Striking is the main focus, with a 5.04 to 2.46, speaking to her ability to dictate pace on the feet and avoid a lot of the damage coming back her way. Namajunas is a bit of an all-rounder with some definite finishability, but recently has trended towards being more of a grinder. On the feet, she rolls a 3.60 to 3.38, speaking to how she has been keeping it close in many of her recent fights and using takedowns to help set herself apart. Now, there is a history of finishability, but you do have to go back to 2021 for the last finish win. The ground game has always been present with a 1.49 takedown average. Worth noting as well is that she carries a 62% takedown defense, and when taken down has been able to survive and work back to the feet. Vegas rolls with Silva in this Vegas rolls with Silva in this fight, and I tentatively agree. I can't count Namajunas out, but as a whole, Silva has been the more consistent fighter when it comes to executing her game plan and getting control of the fight. And while Rose looks to have the ability to slow that fight down and take control in her own way, it's been inconsistent and spotty as of late, so I'm going to go with the slightly hotter hand and pick Silva here. But I do have to acknowledge that Rose Namajunas has the tools and ability to turn Silva's game plan against her and take control in her own way. Just not quite sure if it's going to be implemented in the best way to do it this fight. 16-2 Salsa, although Cortez Acosta looks to go to war with the 2-9-12 Derek, the Black Beast. Cortez Acosta is 6 years younger at 34, 1 inch taller with an inch of reach, rolling over to Lewis. Cortez Acosta is a pretty standard heavy-handed heavyweight. 5.55 to 3.53, highlighting his tendency to throw and the power he has to put it away at any point, though he has been able to go the distance in a chunk of his wins. He hasn't pushed the quickest pace, but has been able to match opponents. Ground game is inconsistent with a .35 average and is very matchup based when he faces an opponent with a weakness there. He can be taken down, but isn't often controlled on the ground. Derek Lewis is Derek Lewis. He's a heavy-handed KO machine with power to end the fight at any given time, more than willing to wade into fire with a 2.51 to 2.49 in the striking, speaking to both how quickly he ends it, but also how willing he is to exchange. He can be caught, but last ate a KO loss in 2022. His ground game is a weakness, a .56 takedown average with the ability to shoot takedowns for disruption or control, but also is susceptible to being taken down by higher caliber grapplers. Cortez Acosta is the favorites here, but without a doubt, I'm picking Derek Lewis. There is very little logic to this pick, mostly emotion, I'll be honest. But, for some sort of reasoning, Derek Lewis lives in the explosive moments, and Cortez Acosta wades in trying to land those explosive punches. He's wading in against a guy who's done this for much longer, who's been in the UFC for much longer, and has experience dealing with heavy-handed heavyweight punchers. Could Cortez Acosta win this? 100% I think he can. He has the toolkit, he has a hot hand riding, and I think he has the power to match. But it's Derek Lewis, and we've seen him go into this type of fight and find the way to win. So I'm going to pick Derek Lewis to win. For the co-main event, 18-3-0-1 Sugar, Sean O'Malley looks to enter the title picture with a win over 22-8-1-1 Kung Fu Kid Yadong Song. Song is 3 years younger, 3 inches shorter with 5 inches of reach. Going to O'Malley. O'Malley is a striker through and through, working great reach and sudden stopping power to keep opponents wary and put them down in a blink. In the numbers, he's running with a 6.30 to 3.48, highlighting how he's been able to push a ridiculous pace and bury opponents. I will admit he does have a bit of a weakness with the ground game, being taken down 11 times across his 2 fights against Merab Devashali and 6 times against Peter Yan. He has survived most attempts, even winning the Yan fight by split decision, but it has been successful against him. Technically, he has a .27 takedown average, but hasn't landed one since 2017. Song is a bit of an odd duck to describe, but I think a striking focused grinder covers it fairly well. 4.58 to 4.0 flat in the striking, showing how he tends to stay close with his opponent in most cases and edge them out. He does have an inconsistent finishing power as well. The ground game also does play an intermittent role with a .61 takedown average and good chunks of control time depending on the matchup. O'Malley gets a decent sized nod from Vegas, and I will agree. Yudong is dangerous without a doubt, but on the same note, O'Malley has faced dangerous fighters before and also beat those dangerous fighters before. The real question here is the ground game, but O'Malley has faced dangerous ground games before, so I have to ask myself, do I think that Song's takedown and ground game is greater than the ground games that O'Malley has either beat or has survived before? And I don't know if they are, so I'm going to go with O'Malley. In the main event and for the lightweight inner rim title, 26-5 Justin the Highlight Gaethje goes to war with 22-3 Patty the Batty Pimlet. Pimlet is 6 years younger, 1 inch shorter, with 3 inches of reach, also heading to Patty. There's not a whole lot to say in regards to Gaethje, at least nothing new. He's a high-octane killer-be-killed striker with explosive power and spades. In the numbers, he's rocking a 6.59 to 7.18, highlighting his willingness to hang in the pocket and wade through fire. He can be caught on the feet, but given his record, we see how good he is at avoiding that. I do have to mention the ground game and how a select few fighters have been able to take him down and get the finish there. He does technically have one landed takedown for a .10 average in the UFC, but it is his only landed takedown across basically 9 years of fighting in the UFC. Pimlet is a finisher as well, but more focused on getting the fight to the ground and working in the takedown. A .96 takedown average with takedowns in 4 of his 7 UFC fights. He can be taken down, it seems, and controlled, but consistently has been able to win those fights or reverse control in general. Striking a solid of 5.19 to 3.14, generally getting big separation by mixing in the control game, not to mention he has been able to find moments of KO power. In the battle of old versus young, Paddy gets the Vegas nod, and I think I will run against. This is another bit of blatant favoritism for me, picking a fighter I really just like versus what might be the smartest decision, but I also think that Gaethje has the ability to push a greater pace and put Paddy on the back foot. The ground game is dangerous here, but again, Gaethje has dealt with takedowns and found ways to get back to the feet before. I think he can pose a threat here. If Paddy's able to get his control game going, I think Paddy's going to run away with this fight, but I think Gaethje has to know that. I really have to hope that Gaethje has some sort of game plan or has trained well to either squash the takedowns or survive at the most to get back to the feet, where I think he has the clear power and the clear speed advantage. In the end, that's UFC 324, and I hope you see what I mean when I said the card is at least interesting to look at on paper. It's a lot of newcomers, it's a lot of people trying to enter the title picture or re-enter the title picture. Wins here mean a lot for the future cards this year. Wins here also put a lot of people way up in the rankings or put people in the mix for a lot of interesting fights later in this year. This is sort of a setup card in my opinion for a lot of stuff later in the year. I'm really interested to see how the setup pays off. Well, in the end, that was UFC 324. This has been State of the Division. Tell me what you think, what you like, what you didn't, and have a good fight.